BYD is the largest EV manufacturer in the world, and the Seal is their Tesla Model 3 competitor. The model we have here is the all-wheel drive Excellence, which is fully spec'd and priced very competitively. So in this video, we're gonna find out how far it can go on a full charged battery at 120 kilometers an hour. This is the third BYD I'm testing the past 4 or 5 weeks. First, I tested the Tang and then the C Line 7, which didn't go to plan. Check out my last video, my range test about that car to see what happened. And then today I picked up the Seal. And I have to say, out of all the BYD cars I've tested and seen, this is by far the best looking on the exterior. It has the coolest interior. It's a saloon, you sit low. It actually has a really nice driving position. I mean, the other cars had, the Tang had. The C Line 7, not so, but this has a really nice driving position. You sit low, you have enough reach in the steering wheel, the seats are comfortable, and also the cabin is quite quiet. At the end of the video, I'm gonna reveal the results from instrumented testing at 80, 100, and 120 kilometers an hour. But yeah, this is one of the quietest cars we've tested, and you can see that I really don't have to, raise my voice going 120 kilometers an hour. But tire noise is really nice to suppress, but there is a little bit of wind off the wing mirrors. But heading northward now on the E6 motorway, we do have a headwind of about 1 meter or 2 per second. So like the other BYDs, this doesn't have a proper trip computer like almost every other car where you can reset, the consumption, the average speed, the time for a trip. This only has the average consumption the past 50 kilometers. And after 50 kilometers, our average consumption is at 24.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which I don't think is too bad considering the consumption we had in the C Line the other day, though that is an SUV and this is a low-slung saloon. I don't think that is actually too bad. But like with the other BYDs, we're going to have to do different calculations in this test. Instead of, using the average consumption over the trip to calculate, the actual range divided by the battery pack. With this, we're going to have to use the percentage, which isn't, the most accurate way to do it. But since the car doesn't have a proper trip computer, that's what we're gonna have to do. But so far, after half an hour, this is really nice to drive. Though the auto steer in this car, really not reliable, really not nice to use, and I opted to turn it off. I tried using it a couple of times, but to see how bad it really can get, check out the range test of the BYD C Line 7. We're now here at our turnaround point, so we're gonna exit the E6 motorway here where the 4-lane road ends, and then we're gonna go under, and then we're gonna go back south, back towards where we started. So, this car doesn't have an average consumption, but the past 50 kilometers, 24.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and we're at 55% stated charge. We started at 84% stated charge, so I'm gonna put that on the screen for you guys, some calculations. But yeah, it's been a nice trip. It's a beautiful, beautiful day to be out driving between 0 and 1 degree Celsius. So it's actually a little bit milder than yesterday, or yesterday it was like -1, but up towards +3. So yeah, pretty much the same temperature actually. And also it seems pretty calm everywhere. And also this car is nice to drive, except for the steering is a bit weird once you get going. But I found out driving it in normal mode is the weirdest, but now the car is in eco mode, as we always do in these range tests where we drive the car in the most efficient modes. But at speed, the steering is very vague at center, which is fine. But in normal mode, the steering is also very hard. I mean, it's very heavy. And that with a vague steering just means you're correcting all the time and it's hard to correct. But you put the car into eco mode, the steering becomes lighter even at speed. Below 100 kilometers an hour, it's not noticeable, but once you get going like 110, 120, it's weird in normal mode. But that's fixed by driving it in eco mode. Still a little bit weird, but not as bad as it was in normal mode. So guys, we're now gonna head southward. For me, it's gonna be about a second. No, for you, it's gonna be about a second. Fade to black and then fade back, but for me, about an hour. Now guys, we are back to where we started the range test a few hours ago. So we're gonna exit here, we're gonna connect to a charger, and then we're gonna see what kind of speed we get after just driving a few hours on the road, letting the battery heat itself. So no active preconditioning in this range test. I don't know if this car even has preconditioning. The reason we don't do that is because we want to try to get, the most efficiency. We don't want to, use energy to heat up the battery, because we want to, have the most efficiency, the lowest consumption. We test preconditioning or active heating of the battery via the navigation system, or cars that do it manually in a different test. That's called a long trip test. That's a different trip. So in this test, all about getting that maximum efficiency and most range. So the Seal has its charge port here on the let's see if you can do this one-handed. Woohoo! Here on the passenger side, on the rear of the car, right there. The flaps are a little bit different than the Tang and the Sea Lion. Again, it's a little bit strange that, these cars are a little bit different. The interiors are a little bit different, with a little bit different button layout, and also the infotainment systems are a little bit different, like how you turn off some of the driver assistance systems, like attention warning and, lane keep assist, and all of that are in all a little bit different places. Like with this screen, you can't swipe down from the top, middle, top, and down. You have to do it all the way to the right, which is very weird. So we are right here with 27% state of charge. So this car has an 800 volt architecture. Well, they call it an 800 volt architecture, but the nominal pack voltage is only 550 volts. So I don't know why they call that 800, because it's a lot closer to 400 than it is to 800. We've seen 800 volt architecture cars with, low 600s, mid 600 volts, but this with 550, yeah, that is very low. So 27% state of charge, and this should have a peak charging speed of 150 kilowatts, and that is when the battery pack is up to temperature. But now, about 0 to 1 degree Celsius outside today, maybe like we've seen 2 degrees Celsius, and we're only seeing 88 kilowatts, So I was hoping that we could see a little bit more speed than that at 28% state of charge, though, we didn't precondition the battery. I don't even know if this car has preconditioning of the battery. Either way, not a high speed. I was hoping for more. Now let's take a look at the results. So what we normally do in these tests is that we take the usable battery capacity, we divide it by the consumption, and then we subtract for heat and discharging losses. But because this car doesn't have a normal trip computer or a proper trip computer, we don't know the actual consumption over the trip, only the past 50 kilometers. But that doesn't help us with anything. So what we have to do with this car, and it's not the most accurate way to do it, because we are relying on how much battery the car tells us we have used. And that's fine, like for just guesstimation, but usually, that taper off isn't linear. But when we do the calculations, we started at 84% state of charge. We are right here with 27% state of charge. That is 57% state of charge used. And then when we divide that by the battery pack size, we have used 47.25 kilowatt hours. And then when we divide that by the distance, the actual distance of this route, that gives us an average consumption of 24 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So when we take that into consideration, divided by the battery pack, and then we subtract 3% for heat and discharging losses, that gives us a theoretical range under today's conditions of 333 kilometers, which I actually think is pretty decent. That is pretty decent for being this type of vehicle, getting 333 kilometers of real world range. Now that it's cold today, it's been between 0 and 2 degrees Celsius, but with dry conditions. Oh, and before we end this video, I just want to talk about the noise measurement results we have gotten from tests I done earlier today. So in these range tests now, I've started to do instrumented testing of road noise. None of the, those cheap devices you buy off the internet that gives just a screen where you just have to guesstimate the actual road noise. No, I have a proper microphone, a computer, and proper measurement software that gives us a graph over time. And I do several passes, like 2 or 3 passes over several minutes to get, and then I calculate the average. So proper instrumented testing, unlike a lot of channels out there, just don't do that, at all. So at 80 kilometers an hour, we measured 62.5 decibels, which is actually very, very quiet. At 100 kilometers an hour, 65 decibels. And at 120 kilometers an hour, 67.5 decibels. And that's not the quietest car we've tested, but at this price point, it is by far the quietest. Like, that is actually pretty impressive. So guys, let me know what you think about the results of this BYD Seal. Are you impressed? I think they're actually pretty good, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.